Congressman, it's been a huge week of public revelations. I'm not sure how much of this is new information to you or the committee, but if we could start with Ginny Thomas, and if you could just characterize how interested you are in speaking to her and if there are plans to do so.
Well, there are several stunning things to me about what is publicly known and been revealed about Ginny Thomas. Here she is weighing in with state legislators in Arizona, seeking to get them to essentially send a bogus slate of electors that didn't represent who won the popular election in Arizona. And, you know, the judge in California, Judge Carter, in the case involving Eastman, this lawyer, describes what the former president was involved in as a criminal conspiracy. That was a conspiracy to interfere with the joint session, to defraud people. And here you have the wife of a Supreme Court justice engaged in a parallel effort to get Arizona to improperly cast aside the votes of millions. And also to add to it, her husband on the Supreme Court writing a dissent in a case arguing against providing records to Congress that might have revealed some of these same emails. That conflict of interest just screams at you. So it's a tangled web here, but it is a pernicious tangled web at that.
Congressman, had you seen the emails that Ginny Thomas sent that the Post reports on today? Have they been swept up in any of the prongs of your probe?
You know, I can't comment on whether the Select Committee has them or had them already. We have a mountain of materials, and I can also tell you I haven't seen all of the materials that we've been able to accumulate. But you know, we continue to learn more and more in this Eastman case, for example, and this was the subject of a FOIA request, so I can comment on it. There are records showing that Eastman was basically giving a blueprint to a Pennsylvania lawmaker about how to fudge the results, how to defraud the people of Pennsylvania. I mean, the explicit nature of that corrupt activity is so blatant. And now it's revealed that he's in direct conversation with Donald Trump, strategizing with Donald Trump. So that criminal conspiracy that Judge Carter mentioned, now courtesy of Mr. Eastman, goes straight back to the president.
Well, so you've said two things that I want to press you on. One, what has been described as likely felonies committed by Donald Trump and John Eastman seems to track with all of the reporting about where where the Select Committee's work is now focused. And there's been some reporting that Congresswoman Liz Cheney and her public and private work is certainly focused on making sure that the ex-president's role in all this is revealed in part in the public hearings. I wonder if you can comment on how much of this final phase and I don't know if you would feel or describe it as final, but the final phase before the public hearings is focused on Donald Trump's role in that conspiracy.
Well, you know, in my point of view, I won't speak for Liz, but in my point of view, he's the author and the architect of this plan to overturn the election, of this coup attempt, you know, masquerading as a legal strategy. After all, he's the chief promulgator of the big lie. And that big lie is used around the country to try to get states to send bogus slates of electors, fake certificates of electors. He's involved in this. He's calling state legislators. He's calling local elections officials. He is strategizing with Eastman and others. So, you know, he's the instigator of, the author of, the architect of, you know, this effort to overturn our election, culminating in this violence on January 6th. So you can't ignore the principal player here. And, you know, there are a lot of other players, too. Our goal is to expose the role of all who are involved, the fragility of our democracy. But the reason it was so fragile, the main reason it remains so fragile is because of the active participation of the head of today's Republican Party, Donald Trump.
I mean, your response seems to render moot the debate from about 3-4 weeks ago about whether or not the committee would refer Donald Trump. It sounds like whether you make the referral or not, your committee is in possession of ample evidence to allege that he's the chief architect of a coup.
Well, look, the judge out in California, on the limited basis of the material he's reviewing, just involving Eastman, has reached that conclusion. You know, we have access to. Well, I certainly concur with Judge Judge Carter's observation. I think he was involved in an effort to overturn the election. I think that there is evidence, as the judge pointed out, of the president's involvement in multiple potentially criminal acts. The judge there doesn't even get into what Donald Trump did in Georgia, trying to get the Secretary of State to find exactly the number of votes he would need to defeat his opponent, and even threatening or intimating prosecution if he didn't. Those are potentially criminal acts that ought to be investigated by the Justice Department.
Congressman, you talked about the states, and I just want to press on the significance of Ginni Thomas, the wife of the Supreme Court Justice. As you said, her husband, perhaps this is falls in the category of wild, epic, 100-year coincidences. He is the one Supreme Court Justice who dissented on how much information your bipartisan committee should have access to. Do you want to understand Ginni Thomas's role in the fake electors plot, as it is now also under scrutiny and investigation by DOJ?
Yes. I mean, I want to understand the role of anyone in overturning our election, and it will be up to the committee as a committee, how we go forward in terms of Ginni Thomas. We have other sources of information about her role and the role of others that don't necessarily have to come from her. But yes, where you have prominent people involved in essentially an effort to overturn our election, to interfere with the peaceful transfer of power. A big part of the reason why people are listening to Ginni Thomas in these state legislatures or elsewhere is because of, not just her own work, but of course, who her husband is. Right. It's unless it's a 100-year coincidence, as you point out. And of course, the justice's own role in trying to deprive the committee of information is just scandalous.
And it certainly tracks with something the Chief Justice has talked about, and that's the perception of the integrity of the court. I want to ask you about the headlines that were made almost 24 hours ago. This letter for a voluntary interview with a Republican congressman that we haven't talked too much about and we don't know that much about. I just want to read an excerpt from the letter. You write to Mr. Loudermilk, quote, based on our review of evidence in the Select Committee's possession, we believe you have information regarding a tour you led through parts of the Capitol complex on January 5th, 2021. Republicans on the Committee on House Administration, of which you were a member, claim to have reviewed security footage from the days preceding January 6th and determined, quote, there were no tours, no large groups, no one with MAGA hats on. However, the Select Committee's review of evidence directly contradicts that denial. We understand that to mean that you have evidence that says the opposite of, quote, there were no tours, no large groups, and no one with MAGA hats on January 5th. Do you have evidence of reconnaissance tours on January 5th?
We have evidence that contradicts what Mr. Loudermilk and other Republicans on that committee said, which is that there were no tours that day before January 6th. And we would like him to come in and testify and share what he knows and explain why he would be a signatory to that letter or whether, for some reason, our evidence is wrong. But we do have evidence that contradicts that claim that merits his coming in and sharing with us what he knows.
In response, he called for the Capitol Police to release the footage that he relied upon for that denial. Is it a fair assumption to say that you're in possession of evidence that goes beyond the footage he's referring to exonerate him?
I'm confident that if he comes in and testifies, we will give him an opportunity to explain any evidence that seems to contradict the claims that he has made. So we look forward to what we hope will be his cooperation with our committee. We have had other investigations in the past, some of which I've conducted, where Democrats and Republicans have come in and cooperated voluntarily. But he clearly, in our view, has evidence relevant to our investigation and relevant to that very issue of whether tours were conducted on January 5th or prior to the events of the 6th.
It's just a stunning question to leave open. And Harry Litman, former DOJ official, said on this program that depending on how this witness and this piece of evidence that contradicts his claim Turns out, if this is someone who provided tours to someone who carried out acts of violence on the U.S. Capitol on the 6th, he made the parallel to someone sharing cockpit footage with attackers on September 11th. I mean, are your questions that serious in nature about his role?
You know, I don't want to overstate or understate what we're trying to find out from Mr. Loudermilk. But we do have evidence that contradicts what he has represented. We would like to talk with him. We think he has information he can share with us. And at this point, I'm not at liberty to say how significant or not significant it may be, but clearly all of our committee members are concerned that the statements coming from him and other committee members don't hold up to the evidence, and we want to know why.